Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Together with myself, Per Hellberg, I have some very interesting gentlemen with me here today for this session, which is called, it's a CEO panel where we're going to ask basically any kind of question we get in. Well, not everyone. Let's see, we're going to filter a bit in the things coming in. We've all been sent a lot of questions so far. So basically, ask me anything, a CEO insight. My name is Per Hellberg. I'm the CEO of a new startup called PlayStar Casino, which entirely focuses on the US market. And we also have together with John. Please do your in.
Good morning. Thank you, Per. Just for those of you who don't know me, my name is John Coleman. I'm the CEO of Microgaming. I need to check on LinkedIn when I became CEO, but I think it was around 4 years ago. But been in the industry since 2004.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Brady. I'm the CEO of Eyas Gaming, another startup. We've been around for the last 9 months. Previously been the CEO of Bead Gaming for about 5 years, and I worked out last night from LinkedIn that this is my fourth CEO role, for what it's worth.
All right.
What would you do with LinkedIn, Michael?
Yeah. So the idea today is that we have a set of questions which we already received. We will also kind of ask you if you have any questions that you would like us to answer, to post them, and I will get them in the chat channel. And from there, we will see which one of them we can pick up. So why don't we start? And basically, I will start with something, then we will walk the table around just to see what kind of interesting discussion we can get from this. So John, I start with you.
Sure.
How is it to be on the top?
It's interesting. It's more challenging than I ever imagined. I think since I joined Microgaming in 2004 as FD, so have always been in the leadership team. But I do feel that when you sort of call it the lead position, just your relationships tend to change. People's maybe perception of you change. And I think it's fair to say I gained a newfound respect for anyone who operates in these roles. It's really challenging. I think it's fair to say you probably question yourself every day. You feel a sense of responsibility for every single staff member, and you always hope that you're doing the right thing. And ultimately, you always get judged in your financial performance. But there's so many other measures that you actually have to keep an eye on as a CEO. So that's the bit that perhaps it was more challenging than I ever imagined. I listened to Michael saying it's his fourth time as a CEO, and I look at that going, why would you want to do it more than once? It feels really, really hard, and one's probably enough maybe. So it's more challenging than I ever imagined, more rewarding in fairness than I ever imagined. But at times it's pretty lonely. I'll be honest. It's lonely at the top.
I think, John, in response to that, I mean, I'm doing it for a fourth time because I still haven't quite worked out how to do it. So I think fourth time round, I'm hoping I can actually crack it this time. I think you're right, and I think that cliche of it being lonely at the top, I think, is probably true. It's a position of great privilege, right? It's a position that you take with great humility, and you recognize that the responsibility that comes with it is absolute. I think a lot of people assume that it's about power, and actually I think it's really about duty. It's about giving away power, and it's about giving other people the sense that they're part of something, that they're part of a shared vision. But I never take it for granted, and I'm kind of been very lucky to be given these opportunities over the years, and I think it's something that you've got to take with a great deal of confidence, but you also have to take with a great deal of humility.
Yeah, you are just sat in here for a period of time, and you're sort of keeping the chair warm because in time somebody else will assume the position, which is great. So we're here just for a tenure, and the position will live on far beyond we will live on.
Yeah, clear. No, I can only echo what you guys are saying. This is also my fourth stint as a CEO. And after the first one, I said a bit what you were saying there, John, why never again? Because it's quite challenging, depending on what business you're coming into. I always came into business that needed a turnaround or as a startup. But I think that's the beauty of it as well, when you can come in and really take care of something, rework it a bit or launch it from scratch and really see how it together with the team is growing. I think that's why you come back all the time to it. But I can fully underwrite what you're saying there, that sometimes it's extremely lonely. But you can also then choose how lonely you want to be, but of course trying to go down and talk to your wonderful teams below you. So I think in general, we like it. And that brings me to the next questions. Michael here. Do you have a proper education to be a CEO? If you can have one, that is.
I saw that question, Per, and I don't know what a proper education is. I think there's all kinds of people who are good at being CEO. I mean, you know, if you look at it from an academic perspective, I know there's a lot of things you can do, and I've got enormous respect for those who go through formal programs to learn how to become a CEO. But actually, in my experience, I think so much of it has been about the soft skills, which are, I think, ultimately at a more human level. I think if you have empathy, then that's probably the strongest thing you can have as a CEO. I think you have the ability to understand and empower people. I think an intangible aspect of leadership is that ability to carry your team and make people believe that you believe and that you have the responsibility and that you're taking them somewhere. And I think that actually is not something you can learn at university or learn at a kind of, learn at college. So I don't know, Per. I don't know whether I do have the right education for it. I've certainly got the right ego, but I don't know whether I've got the right education.
No, I think you're right there. I mean, most fellow CEOs I met, nobody are the other like. And it all comes from different backgrounds. But I think we have and very many other people in the organization have the will always to try to improve, do more, and doing that by using team efforts and really stay accountable to what we do and always want to do more. And I think for me, first time I was a pounder, I couldn't see it coming. Suddenly I was asked and do it. A lot of things happened after that and changed, of course. But basically, it's like you just work and then it happens. And that's why I think it's the beauty, because basically anyone with the right will and mindset have the opportunity to really lead a good organization someday.
Yeah, I like listening to what Michael said there. I tend to agree. One of the abilities, I'm not sure you can there's a formal education that will help you, but I think as a leader you need to be very adaptable. You need to be fluid, constantly open to change. And I think one word that Michael said that really struck a chord with me is empathy. I certainly found it was, I think you gain that. It doesn't come naturally to me, I'll be honest. But something happened to me a number of years ago in my personal life, and instantly my empathy levels changed, and I had a better understanding of pain and what it felt like in certain scenarios. And something changed, and that was the flick of a switch that sort of helped me, I think, become a better leader. And hopefully a better leader of people. But I still work hard at it every day. It's not a natural skill set that I possess, but I've become better at it over the years.
One thing I would add to that is certainly experience at when I was part of Beat Gaming technology company, which was trying to be innovative and very much a startup culture. Some of the most talented people we brought into that organization didn't go through formal education really in any meaningful way. Some of the most innovative thinkers and the people who could think out of the box were not constrained by the rigidity of a traditional educational experience. And in a way, I think as we enter a world where uncertainty is baked in probably more than ever before, I think being an original thinker and not necessarily being too literal is quite a good set of characteristics for an aspiring CEO.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Michael, I know that you have some questions you want to ask as well. Can you give us some examples of those, please?
Oh, I do. Yeah, I do have some questions, Per. I forgot what they are, but I'll ask you now. So, I suppose that the most pertinent thing right now, given we've been CEOs over the last year, is kind of how the pandemic has impacted. John, I mean, from your perspective, what do you think has changed as a consequence of the pandemic, and how has it impacted your ability to be a CEO?
Impact. I guess the physical environment has changed a lot, and well, it was probably two. There's a number of different factors to that. The past year, I think, has been immensely challenging for everybody. I can see probably you guys, you're probably still working from home. Maybe you can probably see from my background that we're back in the office. So everybody in different countries has a different flavor on this. The beginning of it was scary as hell, I'll be honest. It's just going, right, how is this going to impact me personally, my family, and then you move into the business. And from a business perspective, thankfully, there are far more challenging industries than ours right now. So business sustained really, really well. But the change to remote working, leadership through Zoom calls, Skype calls, things like that was a new skill set. It's taught me a lot in terms of communication. It also I also learned what it's like to I guess. You hide behind screens as well. It was also a time when I think lots of us went through some really tough personal times, loss of loved ones, things like that. And when you sit behind a screen, your team don't know what's happening. It's really, really hard for them to understand. So you felt very distant from your teams at times. What I learned is that teams are amazingly resilient. And then once you stick to the vision, once you stick to the reason why you come to work every day, I felt that the teams really combined really well. Our past year has perhaps been our best year as a business, which I'm delighted to say, given all the challenges that we faced.
No, I think it's been interesting. It's been a very exciting learning to go through this. Maybe exciting in a pandemic is the wrong word, but from a leadership perspective, because I think that what people don't realize is that when this happened, beginning 2020, no one else knew what was coming. I mean, we had the same thinking like everybody else, not only about the business, but about family and friends and all these kind of things. But at the same time, you feel a lot of responsibility for your entire business. And I remember the strange feeling of actually sending home a wonderful team that really don't want to be at home at start. They wanted to be in the office because we were very productive and everybody was very unsure. But what struck me very quickly was how adaptable people are. And actually, this whole thing about the pandemic, what it made out of the business is the fact that it made us focus on the core things. We don't have time. You need to manage business on a day. You need to manage a family being maybe at home, kids from school, home learning, still as a manager. So you need to focus. Don't overdo things, doing the core things. And I think especially for people in the managerial positions, they need to manage much more than actually doing the normal stuff to make sure that the team had the right information, know what to do, got the means to do it, etc. So in the end, this is actually what management and leadership is, being very focused, giving the right tools, spending time, managing, not working, so to speak, making sure that people are equipped with what's done. So I think this has done wonders actually for the way I operate. And in most cases, to most people you ask to, you can tell them that efficiency has been improved and still people got, also managing the daily life with this at the same time. So I think it's been very, very knowledgeable, and it would be shame if we don't learn from this and moving forward. And that is one question that's got here from the chat right now. And that is, so from this, how will we look at going forward after this? What do we look at this kind of work style from home, hybrid, remote working? What's your view? How will you work and operate in 2 years from now?
I think the lines have been blurred a little bit, haven't they, between the personal and the professional? I think we're now in a, as leaders, I think whereas perhaps in the past, organizations paid lip service to a degree to people's lives, now you really have no choice but to understand the challenges that individuals have in their personal lives, because otherwise, they can't work and they can't be productive. I also think it changes whether people acknowledge it or not. There is always a degree of presenteeism in the way that people measure performance and effort. In the past, people come into an office and people look at the guys who are still there at 7:30 in the evening, slogging away, and somehow that is the hardest worker. Now, actually, that's just one measure. You're more interested as a business, I think, in effective work and what the output that comes from that individual, and understanding the challenges they have in their personal life and how they balance the many, many different stakeholders in their lives is critical now. I don't think we can be leaders without really acknowledging that in the future.
Michael, could I ask if it's okay, just on the last question? I think you're probably forming a company at the very early stages of the pandemic. So what was it like for you for forming that new company, forming that leadership team? And I'm guessing you hadn't really met any of your staff.
We did a few things, John. So I think, we sold Beat Gaming and had to kind of watch a team of about 280 people transition into ownership by Galsman. So that presented leadership challenges. I wasn't the CEO of that business by that point, but it presented interesting leadership challenges because you've got a new culture, and they're great people, but actually allowing them to assimilate with our business when you can't physically meet is quite challenging. And then at the same time, we founded Eyas Gaming with Galsman as a joint venture, and we've since recruited about 30 people. That's been fascinating. I'm sat here in West London, and our team is in Spain, Malta, Gibraltar, and we've recruited some brilliant people. But trying to do that and trying to set culture and vision has been challenging as a CEO. And it's kind of almost, I sit on this panel as a CEO, and actually I don't yet feel fully like a CEO in this business because I'm not physically present within that organization. Whereas in the past, the whole thing for me, part of startup, has been to try and be part of setting culture, setting kind of a sense of what the business is about. That's been deeply challenging during this period. Thankfully, great team around me, great guy running it for me in Gibraltar, Adam Joseph, and that's helped enormously. But as a CEO, I feel slightly limp.
Yeah, we did try that. The reason why I asked it, so we did something similar around this time last year. We'd started off and we wanted to reset the vision for the business, get right back into the culture of the business, and then obviously reform a leadership team, getting through going through the 5 dysfunctions and actually creating that vulnerability within a leadership team. But having to do all that via Teams as it was, it was a real challenge, and you just go, wow, is this actually working? However, the team around me were amazing, and everyone bought into it. Were far more open than I ever imagined they would be without being in a physical environment, and we got through it. And it's always a testament to what you can achieve when even when the circumstances are stacked against you.
Absolutely, yeah, I can fully agree. And one thing I've found, because we've got questions about that, and that is, how do you manage politics in an organization, which has always been an issue. But my view is that during this pandemic and the adaptation we need to do to be more careful about other people, about unselfish, my feeling is that the political games that you typically see in especially large organization has been reduced. What is your feeling there, John? You're also running a fairly, or at that time were running a fairly big company.
Yeah, it's a phrase that's used quite a lot in politics and whatever, and I think it probably exists in every organization. My experience though is just it's probably a couple of things. One, it's normally just really poor communication, and I think that's where as leaders we can certainly help by ensuring openness of communication, as much transparency as you can possibly give, and know that does help to some extent. Then there's just dealing with it head on and don't leave it fester. Sometimes, it's like as a leader, you're going to have to mentor and you're going to have to coach, but sometimes there's a stick, and it's knowing when to use that. So I think you have to, where you can, eradicate it as quickly as possible. And you've also got the other extreme, where sometimes you find individuals within a business who just are not helpful to the business. They might be super talented, they may just not be right for the business that you're in at the moment. Then the hardest decision is to leave good people go, but it's the right thing to do for the business.
I think when you've got a startup and you've got a blank sheet of paper and you're trying to allocate authority and responsibility, within that opportunity, you have the chance to really think about the kind of people you want. And Eyas is young, so hopefully there isn't too much politics yet. But inevitably, when you bring in talented people with ambition, inevitably, you will find people trying to, build empires or build more responsibility for themselves and bring in more people who are like them. I think you have to be on alert all the time to make sure that your culture doesn't slip into kind of, something you don't want. But I entirely agree with John. I think that, you've just got to, you've got to take it head on. You've got to actually address these things, and you've got to spot them. And I suppose at the heart of being a CEO is kind of knowing when to wade in with your big boots and when to stay away and let things resolve themselves. And I think often what you don't do is more important than what you do.
Yeah. One book that I read, I can't think of the author as I'm sat here, but it's a book called The Ideal Team Player. and it's a very simple book, and it sort of goes through some basic scenarios, and it's I've lent on it quite a lot. I've also lent on another book, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, which helped me sort of formulate my brain. But certainly the ideal team player, if you go through that, you can, and then profile your team around you, you get a good sense of who's who. It's a really good book, and I'd recommend anyone read that who's looking to lead teams.
Yeah, great. Just a quick one here to the iGaming Next people here. I'm getting all the chat questions in the wrong chat. It would be great if you post them on this chat channel for this account that we're filming from, because I cannot see them only for just a small second, so it's difficult to pick everything up. Thank you. But I mean, I think you mentioned something important there, and that is about diversification in this case. How do you build a team? Because I think, as you said there, for politics, it's very often that if you're people that are very much the same, you don't get, the movement forward. And it's at the same time, it's very easy to build a team of people that are exactly the same as you, because you come along. If somebody likes to play golf, you tend to hire golf playing people. But I think you need that kind of diversification, both in gender, both in age, both in experience, in order to have proper discussions. You don't miss out. So when you go into the decision phase, you really have all aspects on it, which is a good way also to kill politics, because you cover everything. How do you build a team like that in your eyes?
Do you want to go, Michael?
I can do, John. So, I mean, I would take diversity kind of obviously away from identity. I don't think identity's relevant. I think, I think it's actually about diversity of talent and diversity of ability. And I think that, going back to a point I made earlier about, the secret sauce often within an organization is the original thinkers. It's great to have professional experienced people in your organization, because they will bring, and they'll bring experience, and, they'll have made mistakes before, which they hopefully don't repeat again. That's great. But actually, to me, it's the original thinkers. It's the guys who come in and see the world a bit differently. We've been in a highly innovative industry over the last 20 years, and it continues to change all the time. And I think that it will continue to change in the future. There's a kind of, the whole younger eyes see clearer thing. I massively subscribe to kind of, I'm 43 years old, and I think I'm pretty old. And I think that I'm probably quite set in my ways, even if I think I'm not. And I think that actually bringing in people with original insight, who actually see the way the kind of the next generation is consuming content and consuming entertainment, I think that that's really important. And much as we might think we get it, we perhaps don't fully get it.
Yeah, I do tend to agree, although I think, going back to perhaps the original question, I still think that you actually have to work hard to be diverse. I think, as leaders, I think we have to pay more than just lip service to talk about things like diversity. I think you can assist, and change has to happen. It is coming, but suddenly when you're in a position where you can affect change, I think it's our responsibility to actually to do that. I think I certainly, what are we talking, 17 years ago, this industry was extremely male dominated. We know that. I think and to some extent that it still is. And certainly in some of the key operational areas, I think that I've certainly experienced. So one of the areas we've tried to work hard on here is to a better, certainly at a better gender split, diverse thinking as well. But on my leadership team now, I think we're sitting at around 45% female, 55 male, which is a step in the right direction. There's no reason why that shouldn't be 50-50. Again, I'm not looking to hit a target. I'm just looking for the right people. But, something that was said a number of years ago that's always struck a chord with me, and I try hard to make sure that I make the right decisions, is men get promoted on potential. Women generally tend to get promoted on experience. And I think there is some unconscious bias that we have to be aware of and ensure that we don't fall into those traps as well. I think in microgaming, we sit around 52 male, 48 female. So we're moving along. Now that's just one area. As that, Michael, you're absolutely right. Diversity of thought for the good of, for long-term view of the business, in terms of the changing consumer view that we now have. I think it's really important. I think you said 43. My God, I wish I've just turned 49. Now I feel like a dinosaur in this goal. And certainly we need to bring in that younger generation who can really help us understand what's changing.
If it's any consolation,
Absolutely.
John, I feel about 79 after 20 years in gaming. So yeah, probably, it's all relative, isn't it?
It is indeed.
Excellent, good stuff. We get a lot of interesting questions here. So anyone want to take on the question? So what is your biggest mistake as a CEO throughout the years?
Too many to count, I suppose.
Yeah, we don't have that long.
Too many to count, but I think the theme is the whole getting involved when you shouldn't have got involved. I think that sometimes a bit of pause, a bit of time. I guess when life is hectic and you've got a lot of things on your desk and you're making a lot of quick decisions, it's easy to lose context. And I think sometimes that bit of space to step back and recognize what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. I think everything that I've probably messed up has been down to getting involved in things that, perhaps really shouldn't have got involved in, should have trusted the delegation and kind of empowerment of other people around me, and rather than thinking it was all about me and me solving a problem. I think that theme has recurred a fair bit for me over the years.
Yeah, probably I feel the same. And there's always a few that you still remember in your career and you're going, oh, I wish I'd done that differently. But certainly in my case, it's probably not sharing enough or not delegating the right things, keeping things too close to your chest. You did it for what you thought were the right reasons, but I think in businesses like ours, we have amazing teams around us who are capable of so many things. Not sharing and not delegating enough to teams is certainly there's a theme of mistakes that I made earlier in my career that hopefully I'm stamping out now.
Yeah, definitely. I think that helps us also transfer a bit to a question that is very much resonates with this, and that's about future leaders then. So based on those experiences we have, because let's commit, I mean, we've done mistakes, everybody has, and you learn from it, and we all that know that saying. But if you look to someone sitting here today that wants to become a CEO in the future, what builds an inspiring CEO for the future? What is your key advice, what you should do and what maybe not to do?
I sense there'll be some characteristics that prevail and pertain. Humility, I think, is an absolute. I think maintaining that, is really important. Not getting too carried away with yourself is probably quite important. I sense that we're entering into a world where there is more uncertainty, and certainly in our industry, things have changed radically over the last 10 years. So I think adaptability and the ability to maintain an open mind. If you look at our experience over the last year, we've all had to be super adaptable and flexible. We've all had to keep believing in the idea that we're on the right track, but have that ability to pivot and change. And, I know with Eyas, we're only 9 months old and we've pivoted 3 times because we've kind of had to because of changing circumstances. But I kind of smile about that because that's the thing I love. I mean, I love the fact that this is all about change. I'd get quite bored when things stay the same.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's I can underwrite everything you say there. It is fun, and you need to build an environment where you can become much agile than you used to be before, because we have to, because everything is changing that quick. For me, it's the key thing for me has always been accountability. That you stand up, you represent what you have promised, you work very hard to stay accountable, and yes, sometimes you don't miss your targets, but the question is then to understand why and what you can do to make it happen. Don't just blame it on other things. Be accountable. That means also that you're not that selfish anymore, and I think also that you need to be very clear in what you want to achieve and how to achieve it, because then people understand you, and when people understand you, they tend to follow you. But maybe last but not least, always try to do better. We very often come and say that, yeah, but that company is too big or that challenge is too large. But what people tend to remember that every single company started from scratch, was very small. So everything is really possible if you just plan for it, be very clear and move forward. And that's also how we avoid politics, because if people really being good informed and working towards the right target, you're not only sorting that, but also I get another questions here about how you balance between different stakeholder interests versus staff. I think it's very simple, because if you have one solid strategy, everybody's aligned and you communicate well, you will not have a problem in balancing interest between different stakeholders in the organization. So, John, what would you like to add to that about future CEOs?
Yeah, I think you've summed it up. Certainly, I think a key mantra for me is humility. You sit in a room. As soon as you think you're the most important person in that room, then I think you've lost the room personally. But I sort of throw in my team, and those around will know me. I live broadly off a simple mantra, which is do the right thing. Now that's my guiding light. Now, sometimes you have to do the right thing. You have stakeholders. Then you have staff, and then you have customers, and you've got to walk that line between what the right thing is. But I genuinely feel that most CEOs, and actually most people in business generally, always have a gut feeling, and I trust my gut enormously. And you know what the right thing to do is, and that's how I work. Just do the right thing. If you try to do the right thing every single day, you're going to get it right most of the time.
Very good. Actually, I think we're coming to an end now of this session. If I'm correctly informed, we have about 30 seconds to go. So any final comment from you, Michael?
Well, I mean, I've had a lovely time, Per. It's been very nice chatting with John. I feel somewhat privileged to be on a CEO panel with John, who's a man of great esteem in our industry. It was a privilege for me to be asked to come and do this. So no, it's been nice chewing the fat on this stuff. I think we all agreed at the beginning that we try and make this a very human element and not talk too much about industry and not talk too much about kind of gaming specific stuff. I think it's nice to talk about the human side of being a boss.
Yeah,
right.
I agree. It's been really nice. It's been wonderful. Obviously, we had a bit of banter off screen just about Liverpool winning the trophy and losing again this year. So we'll share a beer face to face and we'll talk football some more.
That would be great. And thanks very much to iGaming Next for allowing us having this, and for the ones tuning in, thank you very much, and I hope to see you soon again. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you. Bye-bye.